Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lexi and today we're going through part 2 of my tarot and oracle collection. If you haven't seen part number 1, I will have the link to that in the description. So I've picked another 14 of my favorite decks, my most requested decks, and just decks that I don't see a lot that I want to share with you guys. And I'm going to be showing you them and talking about them a little bit. I will have the links to each of the decks in the description box for you guys to follow the link and purchase them yourself if you'd like to. And I'll have all of the names in the description box as well. So what I'm going to be doing is talking about each particular deck, why it's my favorite, why I love it, the pros and cons of it, basically what I'm able to pull from it, and then I'll be showing you close-ups of the cards to show you guys the imagery and everything so you guys can get a feel of them and see if you connect with them. So the same way I did the first part of my collection, I haven't just chosen like my 14 favorites or anything like that. What I've done is I've chosen decks that I get asked about a lot. So decks that I get requests about, emails, DMs about, I'm asking about what they are. I've added those in. I've also added decks that I feel a lot of you guys would connect with, because I feel like with you guys being my collective, I feel like sometimes we're all one and the same, so I felt like I'd share my positive experiences and decks that I really love and pass them on to you guys to see if you feel the same way. So I've done that as well, and I made sure that they are all a bit unique and different as well, so there's a bit of a variety. I will be doing more of these. Yeah, I'll be doing a part 3 at one point as well, because I have a lot of decks and I'm gonna need to do that. So there will be a part 3 at one point, I just don't know when. But yeah, we've got 14 in this video, so I'm gonna get straight in and show you guys the decks. So the first deck I want to talk about is the Wild Rituals deck by Tamed Wild. The reason I put this first is because I get so many requests asking what this deck is, whether it's comments, I even get emails and DMs asking about this deck. I can see why. It's one of my favorite decks. It's one of my most beautiful decks. As you can see, the deck is made up of these beautiful watercolors. The art is absolutely beautiful. It has a beautiful gold shimmer inside on it too, which is something that I love. I'm a sucker for a shimmer on the sides of the cards. So when I saw it had that, I was super happy as well. Now the reason I got into this deck, the reason that I wanted this deck, was because I was looking for a oracle deck or a tarot deck that did not necessarily have too many symbols or too many wordings. I just wanted imagery, so I could focus on channeling and just take that imagery with me. And this deck does the job that I wanted it to do. The imagery is so beautiful and I'm able to pull so much from it, from the coloring, from the symbols behind it. So simple, but yet I'm able to pull so much from it. Now, if you're someone that does like to have the meaning of the cards, and you are somebody that does like to have an in-depth explanation of the cards, at the back of the images there is a full-blown explanation of each of the cards with wording, if that's something that you do like. But I tend to just look at the imagery and channel from there, because as you can see from these close-ups, the imagery is so beautiful. So we do have a gloss over the deck, and if you guys do pick a cards and things like that, and you do have a ring light, that does deflect a little bit. The light does reflect on it, however, not too much. And what I do like about the gloss is it does stop it from cuffing. I haven't had this deck super long. I've maybe had it for a couple of months, but I use it so much because it's one of my favorites, and I have not cuffed this deck at all, and I think that is because of the gloss. Another thing to add is the shimmer on the sides. I tend to find with decks that have the shimmer on the sides, they tend to lose their shimmer or cuff. This deck hasn't done that. This deck still has its shimmer and it's still very beautiful, and I really do shuffle it a lot and use it a lot. But it's just one of my favorite decks, and you can probably see why by the visualization. So yeah, I'm going to move on to my next deck now. So the next deck I want to talk about is the Trippin' Weight deck by Christine Agua. Now, this deck, if you know me, you know that when I look for a tarot deck or an oracle deck, I tend to like them looking like very old, haunted, spooky decks that I found in a abandoned home, right? So when I was drawn to this deck, it took me by surprise, because I usually like more dark and spooky decks, but the colors, the imagery, everything about about this deck just pulled me in. I absolutely love the imagery. I love when tarot decks stay connected to the original right away, but just shake it up a little bit. Like, that's usually the type of tarot deck that I love, and this is exactly what this deck does. But it has so much depth, it has so much attention to detail. The imagery is just so beautiful. I love the coloring, the way even just like small little symbols in the traditional Rider-Waite deck are different. Like, you'll have the pentacles looking like peace signs, you know, and I just love that. Even when you look at the details of the music CDs at the bottom of the bed there, like they've added so much detail, which I'm obsessed with. I love the patterns, I love the colors, and just the vibe of the deck in general. It has such a bright energy. Even like dark cards like the Five of Pentacles here look so bright and colorful, which I just absolutely love. And like I said, it's not usually a deck I'd go for, but it just absolutely sucked me in. It has such a joyous energy, which I loved. So with this deck, there is a slight shimmer. It's not too bright. It's very, very subtle. As you can see a little bit of the ring light, but not too much. And even just that slight subtle shimmer has allowed it to not get cuffed. I've had this deck for maybe around a year now. I think it's coming up to a year. I haven't cuffed it once. It's still very beautiful, and as well, the cards are nice and thick. They don't bend too much, so they don't tend to cuff, and it's just all around one of my favorite decks, to be honest with you. I use this a lot, and as you can see with the imagery, it's just such a beautiful just beautiful artwork in general, super detailed and super beautiful. So this is another favorite of mine. Next deck I want to talk about is the Deviant Moon Tarot by Patrick Valenza. Now, I love this deck, and this deck, I don't use it all the time. I use it when I'm called to. Now, as I said on the Trip and Wait deck when I was explaining that, I usually go for more spooky themed decks, decks that look quite old, very vintage, and this deck just hit all the criteria for me. So if you're into decks like that, I would say that this deck is a must. Now, one thing I will say about this deck is it has a lot of like darker, more shadow work on it, like artwork on it, which I love, because this deck, it helps me see things that I wouldn't see in a traditional Rider-Waite deck. This deck is able to help me pull from more darker aspects, and when I say darker, I don't mean negative. What I mean by that is I'm able to tap into the shadow with this deck. I'm able to go into the realms of what's not usually seen with this deck. And that's what I absolutely love. Even with the imagery, like you can see, it stays connected to the traditional Rider-Waite, but there are noticeable differences, and I see things in this imagery that I don't normally pick up with other decks, and that's what I absolutely love. It really helps me uncover the truth, which sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. Sometimes people do want to run from the shadows. This deck does bring up the shadows, but as someone that's done a lot of extensive shadow work in my lifetime, this deck is one of my favorites because of that. So as you can see, the artwork is absolutely beautiful. It does have a gloss that you can pick up, you know, the ring light with on the camera if you do pick a cards, but similar to the Trip and Wait deck, it's only very slight, and it does stop it from cuffing. I haven't had any cuffs on it yet. I've had this deck a year, and I don't use it all too much. I only use it when I'm called to, if I really want to dig deep, but there's been no cuffing. It still kind of looks like a brand new deck. I would say if you're looking to purchase this deck on Amazon, to be wary, because there are a lot of false copies of this deck, so really check the reviews that you're not picking up a copied version of it, because that happened to me the first time I tried purchasing on Amazon, which is why I've got the link to the actual website so you guys can choose from there. There is a borderline version and a non-borderline version too. This deck did come with a booklet that I actually gave to my sister, so I don't have the booklet to show, but it did come with a booklet. You don't have a lot of the words, as you can see on the minor arcana. It is just the images, so yeah, the booklet does come with that if that's something that you want to double check on, because the image does stray a little bit from the traditional Rider-Waite. But other than that, it's another one of my favorites, and if you are into more darker themed tarot decks, or you are into more shadow themed tarot decks, this is the one for you. So the next deck that I want to talk about is Tim Burton's The Night Before Christmas Tarot deck, written by Minerva Siegel and illustrated by Abigail Larson. Now this particular deck doesn't come in the traditional like cardboard boxing that you usually get with a tarot deck. It does come in a box that you'd usually see oracle cards in, and it does have a more detailed book, a much bigger book with the images inside, as well as tarot spreads that you can use and a detail of the cards upright and reverse. So if you are a newbie to tarot and a beginner to tarot, it does have all of the explanations in there with the imagery as well, which I really appreciate. I love the artwork here, and the reason I love the artwork on this particular deck is normally when I see tarot decks and they're taken from certain movies or franchises, there's not usually a lot of detail that goes into the cards, specifically the minor arcana. Whereas that isn't the case with this deck. I feel like they really did add a lot of scenery from the movie, which I love, because then I'm able to pull from the movie and lessons that were learned from the movie too, and characters as well. So I really appreciate that. Just the attention to detail in this is something that I love. I will say as well, like the suits, which is the cups, the swords, the wands, and the pentacles, are a little bit different. So for cups, as you can see, we have potions. For wands, we have candles. For swords, we have needles. And then for pentacles, you have presents. So there is a little bit of a difference, but it's something that like, as you can see, the imagery is kind of close to the Rider-Waite, so you can still kind of make out what the cards are if you're not as clued on to tarot yet. But as well, you have the book there too, so you're able to look at that too. As you can see, the imagery is really, really beautiful. The detail, the color, and everything. I feel like they got everything spot on, which I really appreciate. There's definitely been attention to detail here. I love the spooky look of it. I haven't had this deck for too long, so I can't really talk about the coffin or anything like that because I haven't used it all that much. So I'll have to wait and see how it kind of like holds. But it still looks completely brand new just to look at, and as far as I've had it, I haven't had any coffin or anything. There isn't a gloss, it's very matte. But yeah, there's no coffin or anything like that on it. And I just love it, this deck. In regards to energies, I do find that this deck has a similar vibe to the Deviant Moon deck. In regards to, I tend to use it to tap into the shadow self or deeper emotions or the deeper side of energies rather than the lighter aspect. So I do tend to use it for the same thing. But I guess it's each to their own of what you'd be able to pull from this deck. But either way, it's a really, really beautiful deck, and I definitely would recommend this one too. So the next deck I want to talk about is the Egyptian Gods Oracle cards by Silvana Alasia. I wanted this deck for a super long time and it did not disappoint. Now this deck came in a traditional Oracle card box that you usually see, and the cards are the traditional size that you'd usually see Oracle cards with, if that makes sense. It comes with a booklet that has the explanations in English, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and Russian. And what you see in the book is little explanations of the cards with the keywords and the god and the goddesses that you see. It only has a little bit of a brief explanation. It doesn't go too into detail, but I guess if you wanted to look further with what you're already seeing, I guess you could dive deeper elsewhere. So it does just have a brief explanation. It also has oracle spreads that you can use. It has different oracle spreads that you can use to your liking if you'd like to use them. So this deck has 36 oracle cards. I love the imagery. I love the look, the hieroglyphs, the artwork. I really thoroughly enjoy that. I love the images. I'm able to pull a lot just from the images and the hieroglyphs themselves and the symbols, which I love. They have got a gloss over them, which is quite shiny, and it does reflect on the ring light, but it does stop these cards from cuffing or, you know, breaking, wearing and tearing or anything like that. It does stop them from doing that, but just for anybody that do pick a card or use ring lights to, you know, show off their cards, you can see the reflective light on that, I will say that. And sometimes they can be a little bit slippery to use because they are very glossed over. But as far as energy wise, like, I'm able to pull a lot. I love the little explanations of the gods and goddesses here. I've been learning about that, so it's been really helpful as well. The imagery just really speaks to me, and I think there is good attention to detail here. And yeah, as you can see, like, the artwork is just really beautiful. It really speaks to me. And if you are into like ancient Egypt and into that, I feel like this would really, really help you guys too. So this is another one of my favorite oracle cards. So the next deck I want to talk about is the Cali Oracle by Alana Fairchild. Now this particular deck I bought more for like personal reasons and my own personal connection with Goddess Cali. I don't tend to use it a lot on my channel because I tend to use it more so for myself if I need insight. So the Oracle comes with 42 cards. It comes with a booklet with such beautiful explanations of the cards. One thing that I love about Alana Fairchild's oracle cards is that not only does she pay a lot of attention to detail and give such beautiful artwork, but the explanations in the book, I mean, she'll have like 3 pages of a deep, thorough explanation of the cards and go super into depth, which I really appreciate. The back of the deck, as you guys can see, is absolutely stunning. I think that's the word I would just describe this deck. The visuals, everything. I just think it's absolutely stunning and beautiful. The color scheme, everything is stunning. As far as cuffing and anything like that, I can't really comment on that because I haven't had this particular deck for too long. And again, I don't use it in picker cards and readings like that. I usually use it for my own purposes. So because of that, I haven't used it as much. So I can't really talk about the cuffing or anything, but I haven't seen any wear and tear or anything like that yet. There is no gloss over the cards. It is completely matte. But as you can see, like the color, the attention to detail, everything. I just feel like if I could rate this deck and rave about this deck, I would give it a 10 out of 10. And this deck means a lot to me too. And if you guys do work with Goddess Cali or you are drawn to Goddess Cali, I would say to purchase this deck, not just because of the beautiful imagery, but also the explanations and the depth in the book, because you can learn a lot. And I learned a lot myself just reading the book alone. The energy, I feel deeply connected to Cali when I do tap into these cards. There's such a strong, beautiful energy that comes through them. I'm going to leave it up to you guys to have your own experience with the cards in terms of energy. It's one of those decks where I'll only use it when I'm called to. I won't just randomly pick this deck. It's almost like it comes to me when I need it. But as you can see, the imagery is absolutely beautiful, and that's why it's one of my favorite oracle cards. The next deck I want to talk about is the Blind Spot Oracle cards by Teal Swan. Now, this particular deck comes in a much bigger box than the standard size oracle box that you will see, and that is because of how many cards are in this deck. There are 78 cards in this deck in total. In the box, it does come with a book with the explanation of the cards, as the images on the cards are images of like sigils, so there's not a lot of wording on there, just numbering with the sigils, so you can follow that number into the book, and it has a keyword with the explanation of the sigils in there. And at the bottom of the deck, you have a pack of tattoos, which I actually thought were stickers. I never opened them. I thought they were stickers. And when I was doing this video, I realized that they were tattoos. So if you see me in my next picker card with tattoos all over my hands, that is why. I didn't realize that they were tattoos till then. As you can see, the back of the deck, the beautiful blue color with the eye symbol and the imagery, very enchanting. It really, really drew me in, as well as the title, like the Blind Spot Oracle. It really, really super drew me in, which is why I ended up purchasing them. So as you can see, the imagery, it is literally just sigils. So it's up to you how you read these cards. You can either read them like tarot, understand the sigils, learn the symbols and the sigils and read them like tarot, or you can just pull from the energy without actually knowing the keyword and just see what comes through. I tend to do that a lot and just see what energy I'm picking up from the card, how it's making me feel, as well as the symbols that I'm seeing. That's what I tend to do. I haven't had this for too long. I haven't had this deck for too long, so I can't talk too much about cuffing. However, there is quite a big shine, a big gloss over it to stop it from cuffing, to stop it from tearing. It does show up in the ring light, so if you are a pick a card reader or you do have a ring light, beware that there is like a strong reflection of the ring light. But other than that, this is a really beautiful deck, and yeah. Next deck I want to talk about is the Shamanic Madison Oracle cards by Barbara Mikla-John Free and Flavia Kate Peters. I hope I pronounced that correctly. So in this deck you have 50 cards and a guidebook. Now this particular deck is the deck that every time I use it in my pick of cards I talk about how it is my favorite deck. That being said, it's got this beautiful connection to like Mother Gaia, nature. It reminds me a lot of the Angel and Ancestors deck, which would be in my part 1 of my Tarot and Oracle collection. And that was my number 1 favorite for a long time until I bought this deck. Now this one is my number 1 favorite. So the booklet has the keywords inside with the images, and then you have an explanation of the cards. It's nice and detailed. It's not too long-winded, but it gets to the point, and there is very beautiful explanations, and it really breaks everything down for you, and it's just a really insightful guidebook. I think I've read it about twice. The color, I just love the earthy tones, the reds, the oranges, the yellow. I just love that color palette for me. As you can see, the images here are absolutely beautiful. And one thing that I actually love and adore about this deck is there's a lot of heavy symbolism on animals, and not just animals being a symbol, but really like respecting them and understanding them, not just as totems, but just as the beautiful, mystical, wisdomous, if that's even a word, creatures that they are. You know what I mean? I really do appreciate that they do that with not just the animals but nature as well in this deck. Like, you know, when you meet someone or you find a crystal and it almost feels like home, this deck feels like home for me. So there was no way I wasn't going to mention it, because I know a lot of you guys, you know, resonate with my readings and we're all interconnected. So I want to see maybe if this deck feels like home for some of you guys too, because that's how I feel about this deck. Like I said, just looking at the imagery now, it's so beautiful. Not just the attention to detail, but the color scheme, everything. I could go on and on raving about it because I absolutely love it. There isn't a sheen over it. There isn't like a shimmer over it. It is pretty much matte. I have had it for a little while now. I shuffle it a lot. I use it a lot. There's been no wear and tear, no cutting. They're quite thick cards and they don't tend to bend or anything like that. And the energy coming from them, I feel so connected to Mother Gaia when I use this deck. I just absolutely love it. I could talk about it for days. I think the imagery itself just paints a perfect picture. And yeah, my ultimate favorite deck. The next deck I want to talk about is the Roomy Oracle by Alana Fairchild. So as I said in the Goddess Cali Oracle that Alana Fairchild also made, I love Alana Fairchild's oracle cards because of the depth and the research that she puts into the cards that she makes. You can really see that she puts so much attention to detail, so much depth into the cards. It's almost like she's just channeling information through, and she really does her research, and you can see she really takes her time crafting these decks, because as you'll see when I start to shuffle the pages, every single card has about 3 pages worth of an explanation, which I really, really appreciate. I love when a guidebook has explanations like that and such depth to it like that, which I really, really love. This particular deck, I don't use it so much on my channel. It's another one of those decks that I will go to when I need it. It's another one of those decks that I'll go to when I really, really need to receive guidance. And it's one of those decks where you literally pull one card for yourself and you feel like there was a message just answered in that one card. You don't feel like you need to pull any more. It's like that one particular card explains everything for you. As you can see, the imagery, the color here, the art, it's like oil painting, the difference in colors, it's like you're able to pull so much from it, even though there isn't like all of these details in the background, just the colors, it almost speaks to my own energy. Like I can pull so much just from the imagery, which I absolutely love and appreciate. Another thing I will say is this is a very matte deck. It does not have a gloss over it. Again, I cannot speak on the wearing and tear in the cuffing. I don't shuffle this deck a lot because I don't use it on my channel. I just use it for my own purposes. So I haven't shuffled it a lot, but it's very, very thick. It hasn't cuffed for me. And yeah, the color, the energy from it, you can feel the depth from each card, in my opinion. And it's just a really, really beautiful deck with beautiful artwork and beautiful color. The next deck I want to talk about is the Botanical Inspirations deck and book set by Lynn Arujo. Now, this particular deck does get asked about a lot, and I can understand why. It's very pristine. It almost looks neat. Like, it's just very pretty, and I just love the floral images on the box in general before we even get into the cards. So this deck is a lot smaller than the traditional Oracle cards. It's a lot thinner, and it is a lot smaller. It's kind of pocket-sized. It comes with a small book with an explanation of the cards. So in the book you have the image of the flower as well as the flower name, the quote that comes with it, and an explanation of what that flower represents. Another thing that I love about, even in just this like tiny box, they have little like add-ons. What I love is what looks like this little menu, and it has the name of each of the flowers as well as little quotes from the flowers, and it just looks like a little menu or something that you'd get in like a restaurant, and I just think that's like a really cute touch. Like, I love that when I opened the box. Another thing that it does have is a small little bag that you, well, a pouch, let's say a little turquoise pouch that you can use to maybe put your cards in, or if you want to use it for other purposes you can. And then it has a little card with the explanation of the decks at the bottom and how the deck was created. So as you can see, it's a little bit smaller. It's pretty much the same size as my hands, which is good for me because I have very tiny hands. So if you are like me and you have very small hands, it's very easy to shuffle. The back of the deck has the traditional image with the name Botanical Inspirations, and then the actual cards have the imagery of the flower. What I love about this is, as well as the flower and the name of the flower, you also have little quotes. So you'll have like a quote from like William Shakespeare. I think there was a quote from like Winston Churchill on there as well. I'm sure that was that, which you can see in the close-up here. So I really, really love that, and I love the little quotes that come with it. It adds a nice little touch, and I just love to add these cards at the end of my pick a card readings as a little pick-me-up, because I just think they're so pristine, they're so beautiful, and they're just a nice little add-on at the end of my readings. That's what I tend to use them for. Or if I'm just picking a card for the day, just like as a little bit of inspiration, I tend to use these cards. They don't have much of a gloss, but they have enough that there's a slight shimmer with the ring light, not too much. I've never once coughed, never teared them at all, and I do shuffle them quite a bit. They've very much stayed intact, which I really do love. And even though they are small, they're not too thin to the point that they bend or break. They still are like holding their weight, as you can see. The next deck I want to talk about is the Isis Oracle by, once again, Alana Fairchild. Now, this deck has 44 cards and a guidebook with 220 pages. So as I said, I do love Alana Fairchild, again, for her depth, the research that she puts into her cards. As you can see, because I'll be showing you the booklet first, there is once again thorough explanation of all of the cards. You literally have about 2 to 3 pages of research and depth into each of the cards and explanation of the cards. You tend to have like a little blessing or ritual at the end of it too, which I do really love. I love when Oracle cards have that. I really do appreciate that. As you can see, the back of this deck is absolutely stunning. The bee, the gold, the whole thing, like the imagery in this deck is absolutely beautiful. It's so aesthetically pleasing and beautiful to look at. This deck is matte. It doesn't have any gloss over it, but I have not cuffed it. Again, it's one of those decks I tend to find with Alana Fairchild's Oracle cards. They're decks that I'll go to when I'm drawn to it. I won't just pull on them every day. And again, they're those cards that I will just pull one card and I feel like I have this answer and I don't need to pull anymore. But like I said, I haven't shuffled them all too much, so I can't really talk about the wear and tear. But they don't have gloss over them. They are very matte, but they are nice and thick as well. I love the color scheme of the orange, the browns, the yellows, the reds. I love that. I tend to find her decks do have a similar color scheme, and they're just absolutely beautiful. The imagery is stunning, and they just have a beautiful aura, and it really, really does pull you in, and you really feel connected to Goddess Isis when you do use this deck. The next deck I want to talk about is the Mystic Martian Oracle by Lisa Potter. Now, I get asked about this deck whenever I do use it. I don't use it all too often, but when I do get requests about it. So as you can see, this deck is the standard size that Oracle decks are. There are 40 cards inside this deck, and this is very centered around starseeds and space and very much the celestial side, which you don't see a lot with Oracle cards, which I really appreciate. I love the box and the fact that the booklet has this very metallic, silvery, reflective like cover. I really love that. You know, when you think of like space and aliens back in the day, you think of that tinfoil sort of like chrome look. I love that the book includes that. The book is nice and thorough and to the point. It explains the different starseeds in it, and even I learned while reading the book some new things, which I love. You guys know I'm a sucker for a shimmer on the sides of the cards, and they have this really cute alien lime green on the cards, which I really appreciate. It hasn't cuffed all too much. I find that the shimmer on the sides usually cuffs. It hasn't so much with this deck, which I do appreciate. The back of the deck almost looks like some sort of eye or octopus. It wasn't what I was expecting as the back of the deck imagery, but I do find it quite cute and quite peculiar. So that is what you have at the back of the deck. The images really center around starseeds, but you do have certain nods to like the Merkaba, you know, symbolisms and geometric shapes. It also talks about, you know, the shadow self and things like that, which I really do appreciate, and it does cover like elements as well. I really like the imagery here. I like the way that they've drawn certain starseeds. When I channel and I connect to spirit and I tap into starseeds, a lot of them do come through the way that they're actually, you know, put into the art here. So I do quite appreciate that with their own little cartoon flair as well. I just think it makes it look fun, which I love. There's no gloss over it. It is pretty matte, so there is no reflecting on the light, which sometimes can cause it to tear when there isn't a gloss. However, I have not had any wear and tear. The cards are not too thick, but not too thin. They're perfect, to be honest with you, and I haven't bent them or anything like that, and as you can see, they pretty much still look intact. Even the color hasn't faded or anything like that. They're very much still intact the way that I had them, and as you can see, I just love the funky cartoon version of you know, space and starseeds and the way it looks. I just think this is a really fun and cool deck. The next deck I want to talk about is the Earthcraft Oracle by Juliet Diaz and Lorraine Anderson. Now, this deck absolutely drew me in with its colour, its vibrancy. A lot of decks will usually just draw me in by the energy, or I just really like the aesthetic of it. But when I saw this deck and I saw the imagery, I could not purchase it. It literally drew me in. The colour, it's just so potent, and I love it. It does come with a booklet, and it comes with 44 cards. Now, what I love about the booklet is, as well as having an explanation of the cards, they do have little paragraphs at the end, and it's different for each card. Some cards there's like a meditation at the end, some cards there's a little ritual at the end, and I just really appreciate that it's different for every card. I really, really love that, and it does have little spreads at the back of the deck that you can use these cards with. As you can see, the vibrancy here, it's absolutely beautiful. Like the images, I really do love. I feel super connected to Mother Gaia when I use this. They do have just like small key words with the cards that are already like on the cards, as you can see, which I really appreciate. Just the color, the inclusivity. There's not so much, like, I would say, detail in this deck. It's just the vibrancy, you know what I mean? The color, you can see like the flames there. Everything just like stands out, and I'm able to pull so much from it. So if you are clairvoyant specifically, and you know, are really able to tap into visualizations, you'll probably be able to pull a lot from this deck. And it's very, very grounded. You feel super connected to Mother Gaia when you do use this. At least I do. This is very much the traditional size that you would usually see oracle cards. There is not much of a shimmer over it. It's very, very slight. You can barely see much of a gloss over it. It is more so matte. The cards are a little bit on the lighter end, However, I've never cuffed them. I've never bent them, you know what I mean? I've never cuffed any of them. They still look very, very beautiful. And even though it's very much like watercolors, they haven't faded or anything like that. And as you can see, just the visualization, the color just absolutely draws you in. One of my most colorful decks for sure. I love this one. The next deck and final deck I want to talk about is the Caldzilla deck, the deck of many things. Now, this particular deck is not supposed to be an oracle deck or a tarot deck or anything like that. I just use it as such. I was looking for an old, abandoned, like haunted looking deck, and I fell across this. It is supposed to be a game. As you can see, the two cards that I'm about to show you, they kind of give an explanation of how to use the cards. I don't go by the game because I'm not using it as a game. I just like to pull from the visuals. This particular deck only has 20 cards, so that is not a lot of cards in this deck, but I just love the symbolism and the imagery. I am able to pull a lot. I love when decks don't have a whole lot going on and just images and just like one specific symbol, because I can just pull so much from it. I tend to channel more so than anything, so I just really appreciate when I just have little visuals like you can see here, and just pull from that, which I really love. I love the old ruined look to the deck. I just really appreciate that. It just kind of looks spooky and I really love it. I tend to use it like I use it for like the Halloween week and things like that. I just really appreciate the old spooky looking side of it. I'm able to pull from the color and everything as well, which I love. This doesn't have much of a glass. It doesn't have much of a shimmer over it, but you can pick up a little bit of the ring light and the reflection in it, but not all too much. They are quite lightweight. They are a little bit flimsy. I have not cuffed them though or broken them. So if you are quite heavy-handed when you are shuffling, I would be careful because they are quite light. However, they haven't cuffed for me, and yeah, as you can see, the images are just really cool. I think it's a really cool deck, even though it's not supposed to be an oracle deck. I like to use it as one, and that's the final deck. So that was the part 2 of my tarot and oracle collection. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Comment down below what your favorite decks are and if you will be getting them, or if you already have them, share your experiences as well. Hit the thumbs up and comment down below if you did enjoy this video. I'll be back with some more pick a cards soon, and yeah, I hope you guys have a great morning, afternoon, evening whenever you're watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys in my next video. So thank you guys for watching.